everyone, welcome back to the Cheap channel, the channel dedicated to all things cheap in the world of fragrances. And speaking of all things cheap and cheap fragrances, in this video, I want to go through my process and my line of thinking of how I approach cheap fragrances. It's not something that all of you have probably asked for, but I get a lot of people in my personal life, friends and family and people I'm connected to afar off, that are getting into the fragrance hobby, and they love smelling good. They love, having that feeling of confidence and getting into things that, there are certain tastes and there's certain personalities, and completing an outfit with a fragrance. And they go out and they buy full retail of stuff, and all they see are all these huge niche and design brands of fragrances, and they end up spending a lot more money than they should have. And when they look at my collection and I talk to them about how I'm into it, they're surprised to find out that I don't spend as much as I look like I would spend. And it's because of how I approach fragrances, and I get into the cheap end of things, and I get a lot of them in, and they start smelling things in my collection, and they are very surprised to find how little I spend on some of these things and how good they still smell for being so cheap, and how that's even possible, and where do I look and what do I do. And so I decided to make this video showing my process of how I approach it, and that way those of you who are in this, if you are just getting into fragrances, don't have to worry about going out and spending a lot of money. And if you want to know how to shop better for cheap fragrances, hopefully this video will help you out. Even if you're a veteran in this, maybe this can give you a few pointers, and maybe you can even give some pointers back to me as well. But in this video, I'm gonna be very transparent with how I go about my week to week, my thought process of how I want to shop and how I look through things. And even now you can see some of my collection behind me, and I'll be picking some things off the shelf to show you as examples. And I'm just gonna be very open with you with how I think about this, and hopefully you can take something away from this. So going into this, I'm going to have 5 points that I'm going to go through on how I approach cheap fragrances and what I might recommend for you to start doing as well. Let's start off with number 1, and this is the expectation of quality. And this is one thing that, going right into it, I'm going to probably step on a lot of people's toes, but it's something that kind of irks me, not gonna lie, about some people in the fragrance community that down cheap fragrances because they are so cheap, and that thus, because they have a lower price, they're gonna smell like they have a lower price. And that is kind of a logical way to think about it. And I mean, you spend a high price on something, you're expecting a high quality, and if you spend a low price of something, you're expecting a low quality. So what I don't get are people that will buy cheap fragrances, and maybe something that's hyped up in the fragrance community that's inexpensive. It could be maybe even under $60, but even things that are under 40, under 30, even $20, or sometimes even in the teens, they'll buy it, they'll spray it, and they'll get all mad and be like, oh, this is just garbage. This doesn't smell like a $200, $300 fragrance. I don't know why people even bother wearing this and giving time to this. And it kind of makes me laugh and kind of makes me irritated in a way, because of course it doesn't smell like a $200 to $300 fragrance. It is a $20 fragrance. There's not going to be high enough materials in this to make it the kind of depth and richness you're expecting, and that's also not going to be probably the best performance, and it's not going to be the most original scent profile. You're not going to have niche quality in something that's $40, $30 or under, sometimes a little lower than that. So there has to be a realistic expectation of quality. So when I buy these products and I take them and I open up the box and I spray it, I'm not going in with the expectation that I'm smelling an Amouage fragrance, or I'm smelling a Parfums de Marly, or I'm smelling a Maison Fragrance Courtisan, and I'm not going into expecting a Roja Parfums fragrance. If it had the highest quality of oud, or the highest quality of iris, or rose absolute, or any of those super expensive raw materials, it would not be $30, $40, $50, even $60. It wouldn't be anywhere near that. But I'm looking at something that is on the cheaper end, so I know it's not going to have that highest quality. So when I do smell something that actually smells good or smells higher quality than what it is, I go on to point 2, which is I'm grading it on a curve. And you probably heard this before from different fragrance influencers in the community, that when they're smelling something, they're grading it on a curve of cheapest to highest quality. Obviously, you're gonna grade something that's $20 different from how you're grading something you spent $100, $200, $300 for. When you're spending that high amount, you're gonna expect it to be top tier quality, and you should, because you're putting good money into it. If it doesn't perform like it should, or it doesn't have the depth, richness, and realism and all those raw materials in it at $300, then you just got scammed and beat out of your money. But if you are smelling something that is $20 or $25 or $30, $35, $40, $50, $60, well under $100, and it smells way higher quality than that, way higher than even what your expectation was, then you have a gradient curve going on that you're going to be like, okay, anything that is higher, I'm rating here. Anything that's lower, I'm rating here. If the higher one is actually lower to where I should have spent this much on it, then you wasted money. But if this one is meeting up where I think I bought and spent this much on when I didn't, then you have a really good quality cheapie on your hands, something that beat your expectations, and when you smell it, it smells way higher quality than the price you spent it at. You're grading it on a curve. Obviously, I'm not gonna grade something that I spent $12 the same as something that I spent $120. It just doesn't make sense. So these people in the fragrance community, even on Fragrantica, which people call Troll Grantica, because people troll on there and leave stupid comments all the time. They'll go on and just bash a fragrance for no reason whatsoever. They may not even smelled the fragrance. They're just doing it because they can, because they are button pushers behind a screen. They go on there and they will just bash a cheapie because they say, oh, it smells so boring, or it smells so cheap. I shouldn't have even spent the $15 on it. And you're like, well, all you spent was $15 on it. What if it smelled like that and you spent $150 on it? You'd be even more reason to be mad because you just wasted your money. But spending $15 on something that probably doesn't smell as bad as what you're saying, because again, you didn't do number one, you expected something higher. And if you expected something lower, but yet you got higher, then it beat your expectations. And grading something that low because you're expecting something that high just doesn't make any logical sense. So you have to go into it with the expectation of quality, number one. And number two, when you grade it and you smell it, you're grading it on a curve. Grade it at the price that you got it at compared to the scent profile and the quality that you're getting. And that's something that I look for. I look for things that do that for me, that I spent a low price on it, but the quality is actually way higher than what I expected. I'm grading it on a different curve. For an example of expectation of quality and grading on a curve is this one right here. This is Cuba Prestige, which online for this small 30 ml on Fragrance Buy, I think it's just around $6, maybe $7, and it's probably about as cheap when you go out to rack stores. This here is Burberry's London, which I've spent about like $20, $25 on, by the way. So almost $20 difference between these two. I'm not gonna expect the quality between these two to be the same. I'm not gonna expect this one to be higher than this one because this one is $20 more than this. But the fact that this smells really good for $6, I'm grading it on a different curve than when I'm grading this one that smells really good for $25. Both of these get you around the same scent profile. They're sweet, they're dark, they're perfect for the cold weather, but they have a different nuance to them, and they have different quality of ingredients and scent profiles that each do good for their price range. And that brings me to my third point, which is, where do I shop at then for these kind of fragrances? Where do I go? Where do I look at for these? All of you probably already know where I look because it's the usual places that everyone else looks at. But as a quick note, if you're watching this channel and it's called Ode to Cheap, you're expecting to want to get into cheap fragrances, which means we're not going to spend a high dollar amount, which also means we are not going to buy things at full price or retail prices. We are going to find things at the way lower discounted prices. So places that I want to recommend are places that give you that discounted price, whether it be online or in store. First off, let's go to online. I mainly shop at 3 places currently, and that is Fragrance Buy, Fragrance Net, and Joma Shop. And I'm quickly gonna go through what I shop for at those 3 and why. Starting off with Fragrance Buy, which is the one that I shop at the most. I'm not sponsored by them or any of these for that matter, even though it would be really cool. I just really love their service and I really love their variety. They have a good bit of variety, especially in Cheapies and in cologne brand fragrances, and a lot of even unknown and obscure independent brands they have on there. And it's really nice. Their shipping is a little delayed if you're in the US because it is coming from Canada, so it's coming through customs and across the border. If you make an order through the regular shipping, it's probably not going to get there until about a full week later unless you do the expedited shipping, in which case you're going to pay a hefty amount for. So I always do free shipping and I always buy up in bulk when I can, so I get everything I want all at the same time. But Fragrance Buy is really good. They also have a membership or tier service that as you buy more fragrances, you end up in different tiers of your kind of membership or quality profile. You start off as an eau fraiche, then you get into an eau collector, and then you end up as an eau addict after you spend so much, which counts to a certain amount of points that you spend online. And with each tier, you also get benefits. They'll give you different promotion details. I mean, you sometimes can find out things earlier than other people. You get certain codes ahead of time and free codes for free shipping and other things. You also get a point system built up where you can redeem them for different discount codes. Sometimes it's free shipping past a certain amount. Sometimes it's $5 off or 10% off or a certain $10, $50, $25 gift cards that's redeemable and so forth and so on. It's really cool and I really like to have that involvement. They also have different promotions throughout the year and different special giveaways and Easter egg hunts around Easter and certain kind of things. And it's just really fun to be a part of them. And it's really nice. They have all kinds of things that happen. So I really like them. They're my number one that I shop from. My number two is Fragrance Net, which is a US based fragrance discounter. They ship out from New York. So if you're ordering from them in the US, they are gonna be quicker than from Fragrance Buy in Canada. Their shipping is also a lot cheaper than a Fragrance Buys, obviously because you're within the US and the rates are gonna be different because you're not having to go across borders. And sometimes even if you get the free shipping, you can get their stuff even over a weekend or in 2 days without having to use expedited shipping. I think it just sometimes depends on their stock, if they have things that are really available or if they have to delay yours due to certain holidays and weekends and certain kind of stock management where they have to order something after you've already bought it, but that rarely happens to me. Another thing I like from Fragrance Net, which is something I'll get into later, is that they have a good variety of fragrance samples, both from designer, niche, and cheap brands. Just go on Fragrance Net, type in vial, and you'll have a whole list of samples you can buy, and most of them are extremely cheap. Even for designer fragrances, it could be like $2, $3 for a vial. I know some Creed stuff can be up to like the $10 or $12, but even some niche stuff is like $9, even maybe $6, but most of them are very, very cheap, and I like to bulk up on those samples and order them all at once. And a lot of stuff that Fragrance Net has are a lot of older style fragrances, like your old Azzaro, Brut, Cabochard, and Chopard, a lot of old style retro fragrances they have on there for fairly cheap, a lot cheaper than most of their stuff, which is also the thing I don't like about Fragrance Net, which is their prices have gone up a whole lot recently, especially in their mainstream designers, but there's a lot of under the radar stuff that they have that is a very good price, way lower than even Fragrance Buy. So depending on what you're getting from Fragrance Net, you can get a better price than anywhere in store or at other discounters, but it'll just depend on what you're looking for. And the last place that I order from online more recently I've gotten into is Joma Shop. I've only made a couple orders from them, and I've already seen some troubles that I'm having with them, which is their shipping. A lot of times their shipping can be delayed, or if their stock isn't kept up to date, they'll have to take your order, keep it, order their stuff in, and then ship it out to you, which takes a lot longer. And sometimes if you order a lot of stuff in one order, they'll ship it out in different packages, each fragrance, which is a little annoying, but a lot of times they have things on there that are really good price, more so than anywhere else, and they have some stuff on there that is available more than at other places because some people just don't think to check Joma Shop. So I like them because of that. They have some things that other places don't have, and even some discontinued or even some unavailable items that are on there that no one else has. So those are the three online places that I like to order from. As far as in-store, of course, you know me, I'm a rack store kind of guy. I will go to TJ Maxx, Ross, Burlington, and Marshalls, which is the area that I'm in now is more Ross and TJ Maxx. I don't really have any Burlingtons too close by. I have to wait to go out of town to go to those, and even Marshalls isn't too close by either. I have to go even at the farthest 45 minutes to get to a good Marshalls, but Ross and TJ Maxx are all around, so I go there almost every weekend to see if I can find something new and different. A lot of times they'll have the same old, especially if you're looking at Ross, but I do have a difference of when I'll look at each one. As of now, I will look at TJ Maxx if I'm going to look for cologne fragrances, like all the milestone fragrances that I've found, a lot of the camera perfume fragrances I've found, and even a lot of the off-brand weird Middle Eastern ones. I'll usually find all of those at TJ Maxx because they just stock up piles of them, and even recently they've gotten a lot of Swiss Arabian stuff, which is really, really cool. So now I'll be able to find a lot of those style fragrances at TJ Maxx. Sometimes they'll have designers for super cheap, but Ross is the one that I actually find designer fragrances for a lot cheaper. If you've seen any of my community posts, you'll know that I've made posts on there of certain kind of finds that I've made where I just a once in a lifetime, very cheap find. For instance, I found Lacoste L1212 Blanc Intense recently, which was a last year release, and I found it for just like $39.99 when the cheapest I'm able to find it at discounters is like $60. So found that at Ross. I found Moschino's Toy Boy for about $29.99 for a 30 ml, which even 30 mils on discounters have been like a little over $30, so cheap on that end. And even recently I found at TJ Maxx and Hermes certain kind of specialty fragrance for like $26.99, and it was a 30 mil, but still to find Hermes for that cheap is just ridiculous. So a lot of times I'll find at Ross very unique finds, even like Abercrombie & Fitch's Authentic Night. I really love that fragrance, and I've never seen it anywhere else, hardly even online, for that availability. And for $26.99 for that in a gift set is just incredible. So Ross are the ones that I find a lot of my discounted designer brand fragrances or even weird offshoot fragrances there. And so that's my differential of how I separate it in my mind. And Burlington and Marshalls, Marshalls is kind of the same as like a combination of TJ Maxx and Ross, but Burlington has a huge selection of fragrances. I found a lot of Banana Republic Icon line fragrances for stupid cheap. I'm talking about $19.99 when other places have them like $22, $25.99, and even online they're like in the 50s. So I found a ton of the Banana Republic Icon for $19.99 at Burlington. I found some Guess fragrances for stupid cheap, $12.99. Just Burlington was knocking it out of the park with the amount and quantity that they have. But again, I don't have a Burlington close by, so I make it a very special trip. If I'm going out somewhere who has a Burlington, I will save up and make sure that I plan ahead of time to stop by there. Another thing about not just where I shop, but how I shop is just a little tidbit, because I am trying to save money and shop cheap, and I'm also trying to build a big collection. I tend to look for the smaller size bottles of fragrances. I'll start off with a 30 mil if it's available, and if I use that up, I'll buy a 50 mil, and obviously if I use that up, I'll try to save up for a 100 mil, but I always will try to get the smallest size available. I have Dior Homme Intense, but it's in a 50 mil. I have Carolina CH for Men, but it's in a 50 mil. I have, like I said, that one special Hermes fragrance, but it's in a 30 mil. I have Tom Ford's Black Orchid, but I have it in a travel size atomizer because it was the cheapest option and it wasn't a bad price when I found it. And that might sound like a cheapskate kind of move, but you're on the Oda Cheap channel, you're trying to save money, so this is the advice I'm giving you, that if you're wanting to save money and build a big collection, go ahead and just get the small size when available, because more than likely that is going to be the cheapest option. And if you're trying to build a big collection, getting the smallest size is going to be the most cost efficient in the long run, because you may not even get to use that whole 100 ml size, 200 ml size bottle by the time it expires. So getting the smaller size will not only help you save space in whatever collection you have, but it'll also give you the chance to use it up, use that money up before it expires down the road. But in all of that, number one, my expectation of quality, what I want to think of before I get into it. Number 2, the grading on the curve, that once I smell the fragrance, how am I going to grade it? Number 3, where am I looking for these fragrances? And number 4, what am I even looking for in general? And what I'm about to talk about is also going to be a little bit of my own personal taste, so take it with a grain of salt. But I think this will help you if you're wanting to get into fragrances and not just enjoy it as a hobby, but to enjoy perfumery as a whole. What I look for when I'm going to buy fragrances is something that will be very different from anything else, not just in my collection, but anything else out there in the fragrance community, in the hype world, in the designer realm. Because when you're getting cheapies, they're gonna smell cheap. You know, they're not going to smell the highest quality, and if they do, that's a really good quality cheapie. But most of the time, you are paying the amount of money for the kind of fragrance you're getting. So when I am wanting to pay money for a cheapie, I want to make sure that it's something that's not going to be like anything else that I am buying. And let me give you an example. Right here, I have Lalique's Encre Noir All Extreme. And if you know me personally, you've seen my other videos before, you know that I absolutely adore this fragrance. It is a very mysterious, smoky, vetiver, woody, and dirty fragrance. It is very, very unique. It's not going to be like everything else out there, but it is still a cheapie. And this is something that I would say is a high quality cheapie, that it is very inexpensive, but it smells way better than what you'd expect for that price. But it is very different. Not everyone is going to like this, but it's different from everything else out there, which also gives it a kind of niche essence about it. And another one is this one. This is Rassasi's Chakra. It is a wonderful rose, woody, spicy, slightly green and vegetal kind of quality. It has tomato leaf in here and incense, kind of smoky. It is a absolutely gorgeous fragrance, but it is very cheap. I think I spent like maybe $22, $25 on this from Fragrance Buy. I got this as a recommendation from Omar at the School of Scents channel. He raved about this and I decided to try this out, and I absolutely adore this fragrance. As soon as it hits cooler weather, I'm gonna be wearing the crap out of this because I love it. It is not gonna be for everybody. It is definitely super unique, but because of the price that it was at, it's not going to be what you'd expect it to smell like. You'd expect it to smell something almost mass appealing, cheap, almost shower gelish. You know, it has that blue look to it. It's going to smell like all these other designers, Invictus, bubblegum, all of that, but it doesn't. It smells very different from anything else you'd expect. It doesn't smell like your Nautica Voyage. It doesn't smell like your Coach for Men. It doesn't smell like your Versace Dylan Blue. Nothing wrong with those fragrances, but it doesn't smell like your Cuba fragrances. It doesn't smell like Guess. It doesn't smell like any of those usual cheapies you'd think about. It smells extremely unique and yet very high quality for what it is. So when I go out looking for cheapies, I'm gonna wanna look for something that is different from what everyone else is talking about and what everyone else is looking at and what everything else is lined up on the shelves at Ross or TJ Maxx. I'm gonna look for something that is like this, that is way off the beaten path. It's something not everyone's gonna think about or look at, but when you smell it, you're definitely gonna tell that this is different and way higher quality than anything that you would normally pick up. And this brings me to another point that I talked about earlier that I'm gonna get into now, and it's about sampling. So don't be afraid to buy samples, especially if you are on a budget and you want to be able to smell a super high niche fragrance or designer fragrance, but you don't have the ability to go out and smell it in person, or you don't want to actually blind buy it, buy a sample of it. It is the best option you have, and you will be thankful you did. For instance, I can't have the availability to go out to huge stores and smell Creed in person, even though I have got the chance to do that recently. So instead, what I did before was I just went on FragranceNet, like I mentioned before, and I bought a bunch of Creed samples, mainly Aventus and Green Irish Tweed and Royal Oud, and I got to smell them on a test strip and on my skin. And now when I go out to buy cheapies or clones or whatever, I know what I'm looking for. I want something that almost matches that quality. I've gotten samples from places like Parfums de Marly, especially through Fragrance Buy's free sample service. When you click a button to have insurance on your package and they send you a free sample, they sent a bunch of Xerjoff samples, a bunch of PDM samples. And so I've gotten to smell those quality of fragrances without having to actually go out and buy those fragrances. And now, if I'm to buy a clone or if I want to buy something that is unique, I can compare it to those quality fragrances now because I've actually been able to smell it myself. And like I said, sampling is also very helpful if you're wanting to compare fragrances. Like for instance, if you're wanting to get a cologne fragrance, but you want to know what it smells like first compared to the real thing, just buy the sample of the real thing and wear it on, and that way you're like, oh, okay, well now I know what that scent profile smells like, so I'm gonna look for colognes that smell like that. Or you're just wanting to get something unique, and so you're gonna buy something that smells unique just like that. And you can sometimes buy huge discovery sets for very inexpensive. I know used to Mancera, you could buy their men's discovery set for about $30, and now I think the price has gone up, but still that's not a bad price. You can buy even like Parfums de Marly's discovery set for about $40–45, and you get all of their main men's fragrances like Leighton and Sedley and Percival and Harrod and all of them in a set, and you can smell them all as you would in person, or if you were going to buy the real thing, which you can even go through certain decant services like myfragrancesamples.com, where you can get a good bit of niche fragrances for very inexpensive and varying size sample bottles. Definitely something that is more cost efficient, and it will allow you to get into the higher end of the fragrance community without having to spend a higher end cost. Even going to certain stores in person like Ulta and Belk and Sephora and Dillard's and Macy's, you can go in person and smell those fragrances, and even go at an online discounter afterwards and buy it for a much better price. It's just a way more cost efficient way to smell something without having to blind buy it or go through the trouble of buying it full retail. I would just suggest that you sample it, decant it, or find a way to smell it in person. That way you can get your references and find out what you really want to get and how you want to get it. Now going on to number 5. And it is one that I want to do a video on down the road, so I'm gonna try to go through it quicker here and kind of give it a nutshell. And it is how to apply a fragrance. And it's something you've probably seen a bunch of videos about and a bunch of things on how to break it down on. You spray it here for this and here for that and whatnot, but I want to give you a different take on it that applies more to this one on how I approach the cheap fragrances. For an example, we're going to use this bottle of Cremo's Ice Citron and Driftwood. This is a wonderful citric, candied lemon, woody, airy fragrance. It's very similar to Dior Homme Cologne or Jimmy Choo Man Ice. It is a wonderful fragrance. I picked this up for about $14.99 at TJ Maxx a couple years back, but this is an eau de toilette, and I know it's very cheap, so I'm not going to expect a lot of quality from this. I know there's not going to be a lot of naturals in this, if any. So because of that, it's probably not going to have a lot of development as it wears on my skin, and it's probably not going to perform the best. After all, it is just an eau de toilette concentration. It's not going to have a lot of longevity, and it may not have a lot of projection. That is my number one, my expectation of quality. I know that this isn't going to be like Dior Homme Cologne or even anything above that price range. This is a $15 price range, and I'm going to expect and treat it as such. And so I'll wear it as usual, do my usual sprays as I would, my wrists, my arms, my neck, my chest, my clothes, whatever. And I notice it may not perform all that well. So I know that anytime I wear this, because it is lower quality, doesn't smell bad, it's just lower quality in performance, I'm going to treat it as such, and I'm going to spray adequately. And this will vary fragrance to fragrance. It's going to vary whether your fragrance is a freshie, whether it's going to be very light and have a lot of volatile materials in it that's going to go off very quickly, or if it's a darker, denser fragrance like Encre Noir by Lalique and that line, where they're going to have a lot of vetiver, a lot of woods, and so it may stick to you a little more, a lot of musk, and it may last longer, but then again, those are kind of a higher price range than this and probably better quality. It is going to vary fragrance to fragrance. Each one has its own different combination of aroma chemicals and different concentrations and different scent profiles. It's going to be nuanced. Each one is going to perform different from the other one you have in your collection. So you have to learn each fragrance as you wear it. And usually, as a rule of thumb, I always double up on my sprays on Cheapies unless it is a way better performer, just in case. And another thing, because they are so cheap, you don't gotta worry about overspraying and overusing, because you're not spraying a whole lot of money. For instance, a 3.4 fluid ounce, which is a normal 100 ml full-size bottle of fragrance, is gonna have about 1,000 to 1,500 sprays in that bottle. So Again, a 50 ml would be half that, a 30 ml would be a third of that. And even still, that is in the hundreds of sprays in a 30 ml. And if you have a huge collection, you're not gonna use up all of that unless you wear that one for a long time, use it up, and then go to the next one. More likely, you're gonna change around and rotate through a lot of different fragrances, so you're not gonna have to worry about spraying a whole lot. And if you are having to overspray, it's okay. You didn't spend a whole lot of money on it anyway, and you have so many thousand of sprays in it where you're not gonna use up as much as you think you will. And that's the joy and the closure you can have and peace of mind of buying cheap fragrances. You're not losing a lot of money. So if you do have one that is a good performer or that smells really good, spray it up, use it up, enjoy the fragrance. You're not going out a lot of money. Just enjoy the hobby and enjoy what you're buying. And there you are, guys. Those are my 5 points of how I personally approach cheap fragrances. I hope this has helped some of you out and maybe answer some questions that you've had or will have later on. And if I have answered any of your questions or helped you out with any of this, please leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think about it and what I helped you with. And if you have another question about something I didn't address, please let me know so I can address it either in the comments or in a video later on down the road. And let me know what you think about these kind of videos. No reviews, just me talking to you, giving you some advice or just talking in general about fragrances. And let me know what you think about the new setup. It's something I've been working on now for a good while, trying to save up and redecorate, and it's something I'll still be continually working on as I go through the channel. So if you have any advice or anything you'd like to see or think it might look better on the channel, let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and a comment. And if you have not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. There's a lot of things that I have planned that I want to do, and I'd love to have you along with me and hopefully help you discover something new as well. And as usual, guys, that's all I have for today's video. Thank you for being here with me and for watching. I will see you all again in the next video. Be blessed.